You really think Khabib stopped fighting because his mum told him not to? Like he's smart enough to know the game and the ins and outs of the game, and he went on an incredible run. And he realized, like, maybe that's the last time I need to roll these dice. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I've proven everything I need to prove. I can solidify for myself as one of the greatest of all time. He knows in the back of his head that if he keeps rolling those dice, um, that it's not going to work out the same way every time. And
Every fighter who has ever stepped inside the UFC octagon has one thing in common. Eventually, the losses come. Every single one of them. Except for one man. And 6 years after he walked away, people are still arguing about why he actually left. Because the story the world was told, one of the sharpest fighters currently on the UFC roster doesn't believe it. Not fully. And when you hear his reasoning, it's going to make you look at Khabib Nurmagomedov in a completely different way. Khabib Nurmagomedov, 29 fights, 29 wins, not a single defeat. The longest reigning UFC lightweight champion in the history of the organization. A man who didn't just beat his opponents, he broke them. He broke Conor McGregor. He broke Dustin Poirier. He broke Justin Gaethje. He submitted them, suffocated them, and then he walked away before anyone could ever do the same to him. And on that night, in October 2020, when he removed his gloves, sat down in the octagon, and began to cry, he told the world the same thing. He promised his mother. He couldn't fight without his father. Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, the man who built the Eagle from the ground up, had passed away just months earlier due to COVID-19 complications. The grief was real. The promise was real. And the retirement was real. But Dan Hooker isn't buying that as the full story. And when a guy who has been grinding in that same lightweight division for years speaks on this, you have to pay attention. Hooker sat down with Submission Radio recently and said what a lot of people in the fight game have privately thought, but never actually said out loud. He asked, plainly and simply, do you really think Khabib stopped fighting because his mother told him to? Because Hooker doesn't. Not entirely. His argument is built around something much colder than emotion. He said Khabib was smart enough to understand the game at a level that very few fighters ever reach. He went on an unbelievable run, Hooker said, and then he looked at the table and realized, maybe this is the last time I need to roll these dice. He said Khabib had proven everything he needed to prove. He was already one of the greatest of all time. And deep down in the back of his mind, he knew that if he kept rolling those dice, they weren't going to land the same way every single time. That phrase, rolling the dice, that's the entire argument in 4 words. Because that's what every single fight is in this sport. No matter how dominant you are, no matter how complete your game is, every time you step inside that cage, you are gambling. With your health, with your legacy, with that perfect record. And Khabib, more than anyone, understood the math. He understood that undefeated records in MMA don't survive forever. They're not built to survive forever. The sport is too brutal, the competition too elite, the variables too unpredictable. One bad night, one freak submission, one punch lands clean at the wrong moment. And everything, the 29-0, the legacy, the invincibility, all of it evaporates in an instant. Hooker isn't saying Khabib lied about his mother. He's saying the promise and the calculation happened to line up at exactly the same moment. He's saying a man that intelligent, that calculating, that obsessed with control, that man doesn't just retire out of emotion. He retires because the math tells him to. And the math in 2020 was undeniable. He was 32 years old. He had just fought through a broken toe in months leading into UFC 254. He almost pulled out of the event entirely. And even then, he still submitted Justin Gaethje in round 2 without breaking a sweat. If that's what peak Khabib looks like at less than 100%, imagine what a fully healthy Khabib would have done. But imagine also what a fully healthy Khabib at 33, 34, 35 would have looked like after years of brutal weight cuts, grueling training camps, and the accumulated punishment of elite competition. Chael Sonnen, for his part, has a completely different theory. Sonnen has gone on record saying the real reason Khabib retired had nothing to do with his mother and everything to do with the scale. 155 pounds. He said weight cutting was destroying Khabib and that the UFC simply doesn't have a 165-pound weight class where he could have fought comfortably. According to Sonnen, if that weight class existed, Khabib would have moved up and kept fighting. So now you have three competing theories. The promise to his mother, the calculated decision to exit before the losses came, and the brutal reality of a weight cut that was becoming impossible to maintain. Which one is true? Maybe all three. Now, while all of this debate about Khabib's past is happening, his arch-rival Conor McGregor is making moves in the present. McGregor recently sat down with Nate Burleson and, without mentioning Khabib by name, delivered a pointed message that nobody in the MMA world missed. He said it takes real courage to grant a rematch. He said rematches should always happen. He said when a fighter refuses to run it back, that tells you something about who they really are. That is Conor McGregor in 2026, still taking shots at a man who has been retired for 6 years because that loss still lives in his head. McGregor returns in 2 weeks at UFC 329 against Max Holloway, and the entire sport is watching. Not just because of what a win over Holloway would mean for his comeback story, but because of what comes next. The Dubliner has made it crystal clear that he wants Islam Makhachev. He wants the lightweight title. He is openly calling for what people in the sport are calling the Triple Crown, a run through 3 divisions that would cement his legacy as the greatest of all time. And Makhachev's camp has reportedly said they like the idea of that fight. They want it to happen, which means if McGregor gets through Holloway, we could be looking at the most commercially massive fight in UFC history. But here's where it all comes back to Khabib. Because Islam Makhachev is Khabib's protege. He is, in many ways, Khabib's legacy inside the octagon. And if McGregor beats Makhachev, he gets to claim something that Khabib never gave him, a victory over the Dagestani system, over everything Abdulmanap built, over the Eagles' bloodline. That is the real reason this story matters right now. Dan Hooker questioning Khabib's retirement reason isn't just a hot take for content. It's a reminder that everything Khabib built, the dominance, the record, the legacy, is still very much alive, still being argued about, still influencing the direction of the entire lightweight division. The man hasn't fought in 6 years, and he is still the gravitational center of the sport's biggest storylines. 29-0. And the debate about who he really was and why he really left is never going to end.